Today we are gonna finally get irrigation run to our garden beds. That's up next. Hello everyone, this is Dwayne with Edge of Nowhere Farm, and we're coming to you here today. It's actually 4th of July 2021, so happy 4th of July to you guys out there. We're here in the middle of summer in Arizona, and what that means for us is a lot of water on plants just to keep them alive. We've actually done irrigation in raised beds before here in Arizona, and what we did is we used a 1/2-inch drip line. In fact, you'll see that right here. So this is what you'll typically find very inexpensively at a lot of the big box stores, and it's where we got this. You know, it's fairly rigid, it will bend a bit, but it's kind of difficult to work with. It works fine and it's fairly inexpensive, but once you install it inside your bed, it's pretty much there for good. And wherever you set your emitters, you're basically done. So we wanted to use something a little bit different from this that was gonna give us some flexibility in the beds and at the same time ensure that we had plenty of water coverage inside those beds. So now while we will have to use this, what we're actually using today is drip tape. So obviously we're a farm here. This is a very, very common tool on farms, especially small farms like this, because you can actually use it throughout the farm. It's easy to attach to hoses, to drip irrigation systems like you're gonna see today. It comes in several different sizes. Now the one that we got for the farm here is a 5/8 inch, that's the diameter, and it's an 8 mil. It goes between 8 and 15 mil in this particular type. And the spacing on the emitters is 4 inches, which should give us plenty of coverage. Now this is the Toro Aquatrax. That's the version that we went with. And we got this from Irrigation King. I believe we've got about 7,000 feet here if I'm not mistaken. So a whole lot, but for us on the farm, we're gonna be able to utilize it on some of our row crops. But of course that's not today. We're going to be dealing with beds. The bed you're seeing us working in here is actually one of our spring/summer beds. We actually have an old potato that's not harvested yet and a couple of sweet potatoes that are just starting out. We just got the slips in the bed. So that means this bed is actually going to be active for the rest of summer into fall before we finally shut it down. Now, we've been watering this by hand. In fact, if you guys follow along on our vlogs, you know that we water this bed twice a day, every day, and we've been hand watering it here for the last couple months. And of course, when you're really hot and sweaty, the last thing you want to be doing is standing there watering beds in the afternoon and evening. We do have irrigation that's run to these beds. In fact, I'm gonna link our irrigation playlist for you here. This video will be included in that playlist, and everything that we've done here on the farm up to this point, you'll find there. So you'll be able to see us actually run the irrigation into these beds, and that's what I have stubbed up right here. And it's where we'll be starting from today. How this works, we have a valve near the house that's set up. We've got our beds separated into winter and spring beds. Obviously, we're working on the spring side of these beds. There's 2 separate zones, so they each have their own zone. But we are gonna make sure that we're able to turn off the water at each individual bed, or of course turn it on. Now the plan is to have it on pretty much year round because we wanna make sure we're keeping moisture and soil biology, but we do wanna have the flexibility of turning it off. So we have water that's run on a timer and it comes out to this point. That water is at 25 PSI. We have a pressure regulator at the valve. The drip tape that we got can go up to 15 PSI. So we're gonna need to reduce the pressure in order to utilize the irrigation system in this bed for that tape. Before we get started out here, I wanna show you how we're actually gonna get all the pieces connected so that we can attach to this stub right here at 3/4 inch, and you'll see what we're gonna be using in order to get to the drip line. I have several parts here. Most of these parts we got on either supplyhouse.com or we got from Irrigation King, which is also where we have some other parts. So all of the parts that you see here are schedule 80 because a lot of them will be in the sun or they're going to have some movement on them, some pressure because of the valve, which we'll get to in a second. So all of the fittings are 3/4 inch, and all of them have been pre-primed. We actually did that as we were putting several of these together. So every one of the slip fittings already has primer on it. I'll just be gluing them together. First thing we're going to be using is a coupler. This is what's going to attach to the stub that we have coming up out of the ground now. And then we're going to have all these pieces come together. The only one that we've pre-cut is actually going to just basically be a nipple. And this one I believe is 6 inches. We've cut it in half so we can use it for this whole piece that we're putting together. So I'm going to go ahead and get started by connecting the coupler that'll come out of the ground with a portion of that nipple with a slip fitting. Don't need to let that set for very long. It's very, very quick with the blue glue. The next thing is going to be our valve. Now we use a brass ball valve, especially here in Arizona with our extremely hard water. We want to make sure we have something that's going to last. The PVC versions we found really don't. Now as far as the direction, this is the valve open. With it being closed, we're going to be using a downward pressure to close the valve when we want to close these off. So we want to make sure that the handle is facing so that we can basically just get inside and push that straight down to turn it off. Now I don't want to put any pressure on this newly connected piece here, so I'm actually just going to use some vice grips, attach it to the pipe, and then tighten this by hand. One other thing I should mention, you'll see that we already have Teflon tape on all of the threads for the PVC. When you have PVC to PVC connections, they say that generally you don't need it, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. I don't want to be pulling these apart later on. All right, next thing I'm going to be adding is a close nipple. That's what these are called. Basically, it just closes the two pieces that it connects. I'm going to slightly tighten that by hand and then go to my next piece, which is going to be a threaded elbow. Now, one of the things with this, I am paying attention to the angles that I know it's going to be coming out of the bed. And in this case, I know that I'm going to need to have it coming basically at a right angle to this handle. Next thing is going to be another close nipple. Now in our setup, the water pressure coming out of the lines is 25 PSI. And with the material that we're using for the beds, I need to reduce that pressure to 15. So I have a pressure regulator here that'll reduce us down to 15 PSI. One of these things with this, you want to make sure that you're paying attention to the directions on the fitting that tell you the flow of water. So the high pressure is going to be coming in this way and the 15 PSI comes out that way. So I want to make sure I'm doing that correctly. You see how that close nipple works? Nice and snug. Now I'm going to come off of this with that other half of that 6-inch nipple. And there is our completed piece. Now, what's going to happen from here, which we'll be showing you out in the beds, is we're going to be extending it from here with an elbow. So this is a 3/4 inch slip elbow. Again, already have these pre-primed. I'm going to go ahead and glue this fitting here. This is actually a 3/4 inch to basically a compression coupler, which is going to be used to have our 1/2 inch line coming out from here out to the bed. Okay, like that, we have our pieces all put together. Let's go ahead and slip back outside and see how this is going to get installed in the bed. And now you see why we put this together, and we actually have them pre-made. So this is my pressure regulator here, which will reduce me down to 15 PSI going out into the bed. And then we have the ball valve right here that I can shut water off to the bed if for some reason I need to do that. And then all we've done is basically just angle that ball valve so that we know once it's connected, we'll be able to get into the bed and open and close that just like that. For those of you who have done PVC work before, the next few steps is self-explanatory, but for those of you who haven't, a couple things. The first one is you want to make sure that you are using a primer. That's what we have here. We've already pre-primed this, but I'm going to go ahead and do the primer on the stub up and just make sure I'm clean on the inside of this. This stuff will stain like nobody's business, so you want to be careful with your clothes. I'm going to do the same thing around the pipe that's sticking out of the ground. Now in our super dry hot weather, that stuff will dry really fast. Now we're gonna be using some Christie's Blue Glue. I love this stuff, works fantastic, sets really fast. And I'm gonna apply a liberal amount inside the coupler right here, and also a good amount around the pipe. And then we're gonna wanna turn it about half a turn or so to make sure it sets really well and it spreads the glue out evenly to get a nice solid cure. So I'm gonna start with it pointing this way and then spin it about, again, a quarter of a turn to make sure it's going straight into the bed that way. So it does set pretty fast, but I make sure to keep pressure on it. And I hold it for about 15 seconds. We have a Schedule 80 elbow that's gonna be coming off of this piece right here. And then it has a coupling here, which reduces it to a compression coupler for a 1/2-inch drip line, a 1/2-inch poly drip line, which we're gonna be attaching pieces to right now because it'll make more sense in a moment. We're gonna be coming off of here and teeing out this way so that we can get our drip tape attached. One thing we've learned when it comes to compression couplings, it's a lot easier to do all of them while you're standing as opposed to bent over into a bed. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get all the pieces attached so you can see how this is gonna work. So here is the piece that we're gonna be using to attach the drip tape to the bed. So it's gonna essentially attach right here just like that and run across either side of the bed down here. We're gonna need a couple of things in order to get the tape attached. So this piece right here, we got from Irrigation King, and essentially what it is you have a barbed end here, very similar to what you would attach a flag dripper to this poly line with. So we'll be attaching this in 3 spots. We're gonna have 3 rows of tape running through this 3-foot bed, which gives us water at about every foot or so. Again, much easier to attach these to this drip line while you're standing up as opposed to working in the bed. So Lori and I are gonna go ahead and measure out so we're about evenly spaced with these connectors before we move on to the next step. Here's a close-up shot of the drip tape. I don't know if you're gonna be able to pick it up on camera or not, but there are slits right here on either side, and those are 4 inches apart, so plenty of coverage. Whenever we make a cut between those 2 slits so that we can attach the things that'll attach it to the drip line and also to cap the end. And then looking inside, the Aquatrax has a special kind of track on the inside that helps to modulate the flow of water and keep it consistent throughout the tape. So you can kind of see that hopefully on camera as well. These big rolls are set up so that I could just take some 3/4 inch EMT, set it up on a Rubbermaid there, and this will just basically roll right off of this gigantic roll that we have here. But we're gonna go ahead and take this, go all the way down to the end and show you how the coupling end works with this drip tape. We're down at the coupler end from the 1/2-inch poly. You can see this piece here will swivel, so it doesn't really matter how you lay this out. You can swivel it so that the emitters can be pointing down or up. We start with them up so it's easier for us to see. This piece here, you can see actually will screw on. You wanna make sure it's unscrewed completely. And then you basically have a like barb that's right here. And what you do is you just take the tape and you slide it over the top of that so it goes past that barb, just like that, and then seats well. And then what you do is just screw this on and it tightens the tape just like that. And now the tape will not come off. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna head down to the other end and we'll show you how we actually are gonna cap the end of this off. So now what I'm gonna do is just basically estimate I'm about here. I'm gonna cut in between two of the emitters, basically, so I don't have to waste any tape when we go back to the other end. This end cap's designed very similar to that coupler. Same exact idea. You have a barb right here. We wanna get the tape past the barb. And then you want to just screw that down so it holds that in place. And then we lay it down. So we have one row done here. Now what we're gonna do is get the other 2 rows of tape, and then we'll show you what this looks like when it's installed. We have this bed completed. Now what we need to do, we have 6 beds total on this zone. So what we're gonna do is go ahead and get all of this installed in all of these spring beds so that we can actually test this out. We don't even know yet whether or not it's gonna work, so we'll see, fingers crossed. We've given it about an hour or so to let the glue cure as best we can. I'm pretty confident we're gonna be okay now, getting a little bit of pressure on here. Now we have these set up on an automated irrigation. So we use the HydroWise system. It is a Wi-Fi controller from Hunter. So this is our west garden bed. I'm gonna choose that. Hit the play button. And let's turn it on for about 15 minutes so we can test everything. We shouldn't see much of anything right now because we have all of the valves turned off. The idea is to make sure we can get pressure behind there and not have any issues. And then we'll turn one bed on at a time very slowly. So you're gonna actually watch this for the first time. I'm gonna turn the valve on nice and slow and we'll see what these look like. I hear water, that's a good sign. It's okay, it's an emitter right there at the end, huh? Mm-hmm. Looks like the system's working good. So I have a little bit of water that's coming out of the ends here. I don't see it coming out of the end that's attached to the 1/2 inch. It's actually from this connection. So we'll take a look at that, but a little bit of drip down here at the end, I guess, is not a bad thing. The lines fill up kind of nice, so this now looks like a 1/2 inch poly, but what's nice is I can spin this, so if we want to have the emitters pointing down, we can. If I want them pointing sideways, I can make whatever adjustments I want to by just spinning the tape, so I really like that. And then of course the best part about this is you can move this wherever you need to. As opposed to that 1/2 inch poly where you're stuck wherever you put that emitter, we can literally wrap this around individual plants, and with that 4-inch spacing, get plenty of water going on top of each one of the plants. I'll tell you what, I really like the way this looks. I think what we need to do now is go back in, fill in some dirt, get the wood chips back down, and then test all of these out, make sure everything's working just right. So we've had a chance to let these turn on automatically how they typically would, just to make sure we're not going to have any issues. We did have one line we had to replace that had a split in it that formed just about right after we had it at full pressure. But since then, we haven't had anything else happen. So far so good. I think a few things here that I want to keep in mind. Number one, I think I am going to want to bury this underneath the mulch. I think it won't have any issues. It'll help to lengthen the life of the tape itself, not being in this full Arizona sun. What I really like more than anything with this system as opposed to the traditional 1/2-inch poly with emitters is I can move this hose wherever I want. So I've got a little stand of cowpeas here. I've got 2 emitters that I can push right up next to these 3 plants that are right in here just to make sure they have plenty of water. And then of course do that all the way through the bed. So I really like the flexibility. I like the fact that I can pull all of this up at the end of the season if I needed to, so that I can get in here to work fertilizer in, to do harvesting, to add wood chips, to do anything that I want to do in here. You know, we're not fans of tilling, but if you were going to till your soil or mix something into the soil, it's very easy to pull this tape up or pull it back and then lay it back down without any problems. At this point, we'll see how it does. We're here in July, so these are going to get full blasting sun here for the next couple of months as a test to see just how good they do in the full sun here in Arizona. So just want to thank you for joining us today. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. We cover a lot of things here. Obviously today was about irrigation, but we're starting a farm, a full-fledged farm from flat desert land here in the Arizona desert. Would love to have you as a subscriber and share the content. If you know anybody that would enjoy this type of content, would really encourage you to share it. That helps us here as well. And our Amazon shop, I'll leave a link down below. That's a free, painless way to help support the channel. If you start with that link, it doesn't matter what you buy, you help to support us here. So just want to thank you for joining us today and remind you, if we can farm on the edge of nowhere, so can you. So we started digging in the dirt here and I saw eyes poking out at me, and that's because this little guy found his way into the bed. Hey little dude, you're in the wrong spot. So I think he might enjoy the sorghum. I'm guessing the sorghum patch. That's probably where this guy needs to head.